All right, so let's do some more examples here. So f of x equals negative 1 over x. I want you to graph this without a calculator. So step one, what's my parent function? So I need to be able to draw my parent function. So I need to know 1 over x is my parent function. We can recognize that, but I need to remember what that looks like. So I remember there's a horizontal asymptote at 0. There's a vertical asymptote at 0. My graph lives down here in the third quadrant and up here in the first quadrant. Okay, so there's my parent function. This is the graph of 1 over x. So now what does this negative do here? So this negative is out in front of the function. Okay, so which one is this gonna, what's going on here? This negative is impacting my output values. It's out in front, so this is gonna be a reflection over the x-axis. Okay, so when I go to reflect this part of the graph is going to come down here. This part of the graph is going to get reflected up here. And there we go. So this blue graph is the graph negative 1 over x. Now, you guys may recognize that this blue graph is also the same as if I would have taken the original black graph and reflected it over the y-axis. And why does that work? Well, that's not going to work every time, but if you look at this, if I had 1 over negative x, well, in this case, this would be the negative right next to the input value, which, according to our notes, would give me a reflection over the y-axis. Well, you guys probably know that if I have 1 over, like, negative 2, that's the same as saying negative 1/2. Those are equivalent. So in the same way here, 1 over negative x is the same as negative 1 over x. So that's why in this circumstance, it happens to be the same if you reflect it over the x-axis or if you reflect over the y-axis. Okay, next problem. I want an equation for this graph. So step one, who's my parent function? So I have this b graph, which means my parent function is absolute value of x. So that's step one. Step two, what happens to it? To get reflected over the x-axis, over y-axis, over both? So to me, my parent function would usually be up here. So this looks like it got reflected over the x-axis. So what do I do to my function to reflect over the x-axis? Well, reflecting over the x-axis, I'm going to take a negative and throw it out in front of the entire function. And so in this case, I'm just going to throw a negative there. And so this is my new function. So this black curve is f of x equals negative absolute value of x. Okay, and last example here, I want an equation for this function. All right, so step one is figure out what is my parent function. So this guy is actually, the parent function is square root of x. Okay, so square root of x is my parent function. So what happened here? Well, looks like it got reflected over the origin. Okay, and we can see that if I reflect it over the x-axis first, it would be down here in quadrant 4, and then if I reflect it over the y-axis, we would get to the final version. So this was a reflection over the x-axis and the y-axis, which means there's a reflection of the origin. Okay, so what would the equation be? So my notes tell me I need to change the inputs and I need to change the outputs. I need to change both. So my final equation would be f of x equals negative square root of negative x. So I change the outputs and I change the inputs. Reflection over the x-axis, reflection over the y-axis gives me a reflection over the origin. Okay, so hopefully that helps. If you need any extra help or any extra examples, let me know. We can do some office hours.